Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to CEO Growth Talks. I'm Pete Hayes, one of the folks at Chief Outsiders, and it is my pleasure to welcome today our special guest, the Nearshore Company, and we have co-CEOs in Armando Martinez and Jorge Gonzalez. So welcome, guys. Thanks for coming along. And just to let everybody know the format of this program, it's a 30-minute program. You're welcome to add comments into the chat if you're here live with us, and we'll try to pick those up as we go. But the purpose of this session is to get to know a business that is growing, that is in an interesting space, that could be relevant to your business, and especially how we unpack certain leadership insights that our guests have. And that's what Armando and Jorge will bring to us today. So welcome, guys. And let's start out. And Jorge, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Nearshore Company and what's going on with that? Where are you guys? Maybe you can define Nearshore for those folks where they might think of you as a SaaS company, but maybe you're not that. But why don't you go ahead?
Sure, Pete. Well, first of all, thank you for having us here. They're very happy to share what we do, share our story, and as you said, maybe it will inspire someone to learn more about nearshoring. The Nearshore Company is a Texas-based company. We were founded 32 years ago in Brownsville, Texas, with the purpose of helping mainly North American manufacturing firms to manufacture in Mexico. And this can take many different shapes and forms, but in the end, it's all about manufacturing close to home. And the term nearshoring, as differing from reshoring, has actually become very popular lately because, and we'll talk about this probably in a few minutes, but so many things related to supply chain and manufacturing have changed globally and so quickly, starting with the US and China decoupling. And that has made a lot of US, and I would include European and now even Asian companies to want to bring manufacturing back to the US. And that's commonly known as reshoring, right? So you offshored probably 10, 15 years ago, then you want to reshore. But then reshoring is complicated, mainly from a cost perspective. The cost of labor is actually higher in the US than what it was when companies offshored. And then labor availability. And so then they look at neighboring countries, in this case, Mexico, and that's where nearshoring comes in.
And you guys being co-CEOs, Armando, maybe you can help us understand, how do you divide up your roles? Let's just kind of start there, and then we'll delve back into some of the reasons why Nearshore Company is being so successful. But tell us about how you guys divide up your responsibilities.
Sure. We follow the advice of divide and conquer. And the way we divided our responsibilities was trying to determine what are the strengths and interests of each one of us, and based on that, split roles. So for those of you who are, for example, familiar with the Working Genius, Jorge is a W and I am a T, so we like and are attracting and are like to think are good at different kind of things. So in specific, in our case, Jorge is the most charismatic of the two of us, so he's in charge of sales, and he's our chief revenue officer, and I am not as charismatic, so I take care of finance and operations.
And yet you both have finance backgrounds, if I remember right. Yeah, both MBAs. Jorge, you went to NYU, I think it was, and Armando, you're a Stanford MBA.
Yes.
You guys have incredible credentials to be running a business, and yet and even together. How did that happen?
Yeah, it's an interesting story because actually, as many, if not all things in my life, the good things come from are related somehow to my wife. So in this specific example, Jorge and my wife studied together their masters at NYU. So that's how I got to know Jorge. And once we got back from the MBA, I went into private equity, but Jorge went into operating a company. That's why he had a lot more, um, you know, definitely people skills than I have. I hope I have developed some, but especially at that time, and he's more experienced on that side, and so it was more natural for me to take over the finance part because on the deal side, that's where I spent most of my career before this.
Wow. And so you've been doing this for less than 5 years in this as the Nearshore Company. Tell us how you came by the company, and what does growth look like since you took it over?
Yeah, this is our 5th year into the operation of the company as co-CEOs. We came in 2019 as part of an acquisition that we put together under the search fund model. From searching from Mexico City. So it was a search for Mexico City. The thesis was a business that was cross-border. So there was a lot of search going on the border. And then we found this company that used to be called International Assembly that was founded in 1992 by an American solo entrepreneur that was wearing many hats when we met him. He did a spectacular job of growing the company by himself, being the C of everything, the CFO, the CEO, the C everything. But then he wanted to exit the business. So it was perfect timing, it was perfect timing. It was right before the pandemic. And Armando and I decided to go ahead. We convinced our investors to go through with it, and it's been a very good ride. I mean, we have doubled the size of the company by several metrics since then. Benefited in great part by luck, because we did not have a magic ball to see the pandemic was coming and what the pandemic was going to do for global supply chains, global manufacturing, the demographic shift in the US, the demographic shift in China, and then the geopolitical events that have triggered a very different attitude towards globalization and more towards regionalization. So all of that came together. I mean, right after we made the acquisition. So we have been very fortunate. Of course, it's been challenging, as every business is, but we have found a great audience to that's interested in nearshoring, right? And that's what we say at the Nearshore Company, right? We help others win. That is our motto, because that is our ethos, right? We help non-Mexico based manufacturing companies win in nearshoring, win in Mexico. Yeah.
Now, when people hear nearshoring and nearshore manufacturing, they think of just bringing things closer, logistics of shipping back into the U.S. or into North America. They think of less expensive talent. But when you came into this company, if I remember right, there were some things you needed to change relative to people, and now people seems to be the basis of your story.
It is, and and I would like to think that people are always the central characters, right, of all great stories. And yes, when we came in, we were very fortunate that there was a team in place that was very good and very talented, but we have invested very heavily in two things. First, and I would say first and foremost, on creating the culture that we wanted to create, where we put employees first. Um, I don't think that was as emphasized before as we did.
And how does and hold on, don't forget your thought, but how is that an investment?
Well, it is an investment because it ranges from small things that you would think are not as important and not as costly as, for example, having nice chairs, nice furniture, a nice setting where people can work, and that applies for unionized employee, for the floor space employee, but also for the office employees, for everybody. And again, it's small things, but also big things, like dedicating the time to show people that you appreciate them, but also when it's needed to provide the feedback that things are not going as you expected to do, and at least try to do that in the most humane way possible, right? Because we're not machines. We do not respond to on and off switch. So that's the kind of things that we have done.
And that was the first investment, and then there was a second.
Well, the second investment is actually because I'm now thinking about the soft stuff, the culture, which is not at all soft and not at all. It is very important. But the second is investing in talent, right?
Okay.
Whether that is promoting people from within that you think have potential and that can further develop, or bringing on new faces to the company, and in the short term, it can be a little bit overwhelming, right? Because you see the team growing, but it pays off. It really does pay off.
So lots of companies like to say, well, we've got great people, it's our talent, whatever, but there's something going on relative to the United States and frankly in China and perhaps other manufacturing regions that puts Mexico in particular in a pretty good spot. You want to tell us more about that?
Sure. Well, the demographics in Mexico, as Jorge was mentioning, are very favorable. Mexico's population pyramid is quite healthy. So we have a young workforce. We have plenty of available labor, and a deep pool of employees that is looking and very eager to take on these jobs. Whereas after, for example, 2000, maybe even before that, China was actually the provider of labor for the world, right? They had the world could access this deep and immense pool of labor that was previously not accessible. But now that has reached its peak, and it's actually shrinking, and it will shrink ever more at a more accelerated pace going forward. So when you combine all the supply chain effects that people are familiar with the pandemic or wars and everything, with what is going on in the workforce in China, I think Mexico is very well positioned.
And Jorge, that's not just right now, right? But that's that helps make a decision now, but it looks even better 5, 10 years down the road in terms of demographic shifts, doesn't it?
Yeah. You're right, Pete. I mean, to make this point even stronger, when we just uh, took over the company in 2019, most of the conversations that I was having from a business development standpoint, it was about companies seeking for lower cost options, right? They were already seeing China being much more expensive than when they decided to offshore, and now they were looking at Mexico for a more efficient cost structure on the labor side. But then after the pandemic, when people, if everyone remembers, we were like, where are the workers? Where have they gone? Right? Like people disappeared suddenly from the workforce for a number of reasons. But a big part of it was because a lot of people were exiting the workforce. A real demographic shift. You know, a very large working population in the U.S. was soon to retire, and the new ones coming were still in college, right? And as they say, the only way to have 25-year-old workers is to wait 25 years, right? You can't do that from one day to the next. So that is when Mexico starts to be a real alternative to provide this labor. And then the conversations and the incoming inquiries we were starting to get were not about cost anymore. They were about labor availability. And I remember, and we have a couple of those clients now that during our first conversations, they said, can you find people? Because I just cannot find people. It's not about how much I pay, because I've already increased the salaries like 5 times, and I still cannot get people to be interested or just people to come to work. And that's when we started to see there was really a problem in U.S. manufacturing, more blue collar work, even worse, right? And so when you start to look at the demographics going forward, it gets even more pronounced. I mean, because you have China, they had this one-child policy many years ago. Now they want to go back, and they can't. They can't get a woman to have more children anymore. So
they missed 1 or 2 generations. Yeah,
it's only going to get worse. In other manufacturing countries, we tend to think of China because China has been a powerhouse in manufacturing for the past years. But countries like Germany, for example, that have really shined in manufacturing are also going to have demographic issues. Countries like Italy, right? So Mexico and countries like Mexico in the next decades, I would say, we'll see a lot of manufacturing that used to be done in other countries will be transferred to Mexico. And people like to think a lot of automation, like coming here to save the day. And it's not as easy as it seems. I mean, there are robots and they can do very impressive things, but they're very expensive, at least for now, and they can't do everything. I mean, we still need people, and we're going to need people to make the things that we use in our daily life for many years to come. And so that's good for manufacturing in our case in Mexico, right?
So if I'm a manufacturer in the U.S., maybe I'm already reshoring some things. I'm maybe considering nearshoring. But based upon what you've seen, what are the considerations that a CEO might miss? What are the things that are important to consider? And maybe we've just been talking about them, but are there other things that I need to be thinking about as a manufacturer in the U.S. When it comes to selecting how I'm going to get my products built?
I think, and I would even go back to the divide and conquer analogy that I mentioned at the start. I think you need to think about what are your competitive advantages. And if I'm the CEO of a manufacturing company, I don't think the competitive advantage of the labor and workforce that I have in the US is necessarily the, let me call it, the low and middle value manufacturing, where the US manufacturing workforce has been very, very successful is at the high level, high value added manufacturing, ranging from design to more knowledge related work. Uh, and and I think it can be a symbiotic relationship. And that's what I mean about this, the divide and conquer. I think thinking very strategically about, okay, I don't need to move everything to Mexico, right? That is not is not a black and white decision. But I can think very strategically, what of what I'm doing currently in the US would I be served better by moving to Mexico, and what do I want to retain in the US because it's better for me to do it here, again because of how specialized it is and how sophisticated it is. But I think once you think about the decision in those terms, that you can actually have a symbiotic relationship as opposed to a black and white. I think that can be much more productive and constructive.
Okay. And when folks are looking for a partner in Mexico, I mean, there's different ways, and your business has different ways of serving potential clients. Sometimes you're actually doing the manufacturing, and sometimes you're basically providing the infrastructure and the talent. Can you talk about those two different ways that you're helping companies?
Yeah.
Maybe that's you, Jorge.
Yeah. So I'll start by saying, Pete, and it's probably what you sort of have been, you sort of implied. First and foremost, I would recommend to use a company such as ours to begin with, right? Because you need a river guide. It's always much better to start with a local player. I mean, I'm thinking of someone that has never manufactured in Mexico, right? I mean, you have to understand that every country has its way of doing business, and I always stress that because maybe sometimes people overlook some things and then they cost dearly, right? When we start to talk with a CEO or usually the C-suite or the owner that takes these decisions at our clients, we always say, how involved do you want to be in your day-to-day operations? And surprisingly, maybe not so much to everyone, but we find answers across a wide spectrum, right? From companies on one end of the spectrum that say, you know what, I want to do the manufacturing, I want to continue managing the day-to-day production, planning, scheduling, everything, but I need help on the Mexico piece. Right. So I want you to tell me where I should put my facility. I want you to lease it for me. I want you to hire the employees and actually be my employer of record. I want you to import and export the raw material and the finished product under your Maquila program, which is the name of the program to manufacture in a way that under the USMCA that is tariff free in most cases. But then on the other end of that spectrum, we have companies that tell us, I want to be the least involved. So the most that you can take over my manufacturing is better for me, right? So they're thinking more in terms of a contract manufacturer, right? And we can adapt and we can be flexible across that spectrum, right? And when you look at our business today, we have what we call the manufacturing services, which is really geared towards the first example I gave, which is more of support the clients to manufacture in Mexico. And then on the other side, we have manufacturing operations, in which we set up a manufacturing facility, a manufacturing operation that is dedicated more like a contract manufacturer to our clients. And that may change over time. Sometimes we have clients that start more on the service side, and they tell us, you know what, I mean, this has been a very good relationship. Would you consider taking over my operation, and then you become my contract manufacturer? And we have done that. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, we're going to start to wrap up here. I want to ask you each, and I'll start with you, Armando. You have 4 children, is this right, Armando? Yeah.
We do have 4 children, and when the youngest was born, the oldest was 3 years and 9 months, and none of them are twins. So
holy moly!
It was very very consistent, non-stop almost. But yeah, two girls and 2 boys, and they're ages from 8 to 11. So very a lot of fun and a lot of activities.
Wow, that's great. Well, then your 11-year-old's old enough to have an idea of what you do.
Yeah, they do, and it's funny because for them, they looked me up on Google, right? And they found me because of our website. And they were like super excited. Like, oh my God, that you are actually somebody.
Dad's a YouTube star, right?
They were like, oh, you do exist out there.
What are you learning in this process? Because you've got a great education. You've been in the private equity space. So you've been in capital markets and such, and now you're running this business. What are you learning that you hope your kids also learn?
Yes, and let me say that it's something that I'm still learning. So I do not mean by any means that I have mastered this, but when you're in private equity, you're very focused on the deals, on the metrics, on the financials, and you show up to the board of directors with your Starbucks and say, hey, you know why is that chart in blue? It should be in orange. And that's okay, my job here is done. And that you don't realize all the hard work that goes on the day-to-day, and you don't realize that it's all about people. At least I didn't. I don't want to generalize this for all PE guys, but for me, it has been a humbling learning experience. That at the end of the day, it's all about people. From your business partner to the floor space worker, it's all about interacting and relationships.
So thank you. And Jorge, I'm going to twist the question up a little bit, but you have 3 children, correct?
Yes, I have a boy and I have 2 girls. Yeah.
Fantastic. What, in terms of and now I'm going to ask a question not about your kids and what they think about you, but when you think of the folks that come to work every day, you guys have deliberately worked on and recognized the value of the culture. But why do what do your people say? How does that manifest? Why would they recommend to a friend to come to work? They wouldn't say, oh, it's the culture's great. What do they say?
Yeah, we have close to 2,000 employees in 16 different facilities on the northeast of Mexico. And being a cross-border business, right? We have employees on the U.S. side, we have employees on the Mexican side, and I would start with what I think, or because of what I hear on the Mexican side. So employees in Mexico, and this is a good point to what we were talking about, comparing to the U.S. They greatly value a company that is stable financially, that is growing, so they have options, they have career paths, and many times this is the only income for a family, right? Especially on the manufacturing side of our business. And so that stability and that recognition is very, very valuable to the employees, right? Then on the U.S. side, which is it's a slightly different employee. I mean, some of them are U.S. Nationals, and in Mexico, they're Mexican, but also it's more towards business development, for example, which is done because our clients are North American, and they are really excited about what nearshoring is doing, and they want to be a part of it. And they truly value that we are a company that has 30 plus years doing this with a very strong reputation. We're growing, and that we're providing a career for a lot of our workers.
Wow. Well, that's so great to hear. And we're out of time, and I'm sorry we've gone a minute over for those of you that are hanging with us. Just want to thank you, Jorge and Armando, and congratulations on a great business. And disclosure, Nearshore Company is a client of Chief Outsiders, and I just want to thank you both for your trust in us. It's been years since we've been working with you for a good period of time, and we value the relationship and love the progress that we're all making. And kudos to you too for your leadership, and fantastic. So thanks everybody. Thanks Jorge, Armando. We'll see you next time on CEO Growth Talks.
Thank you.
Thank you.